Welcome to True Crime and Wine. I'm John Matthews, and today, myself and Brandy Diamond, we're going to take you on a journey profiling the life and crimes of Larry Eyler, a serial killer who confessed to murdering 21 young boys across several Midwestern states. And I want to welcome in my co-host, Brandy Diamond. And Brandy, this guy was able to get away with nearly 24 murders in just a few years by traveling the interstate highways and leaving a trail of bodies scattered over multiple law enforcement jurisdictions and several states.
Yeah, John, how many times have we seen this, right? Going cross country, committing murders. This is a lot of victims in a short amount of time. So he was very busy, and looking forward to sharing more with our listeners really about this guy and what he was able to do.
Yeah, and having two homes and traveling in between theirs and different work, but he was up and down these highways all the time, so he knew where to pick up people and where to dump the bodies.
Okay, so today, John, we are talking about Larry Eyler, born December 21st, 1952. And as always, we want to try to dive in a little bit about their young life, see if there's any predecessors leading up to the crimes that they will commit. Born 1952, died March 6, 1994. We know there are 21 confirmed victims, John, but he is suspected of 25 to 40 plus, even more than that. He was a mobile offender, again, going across state highways, cross state lines, serial torturer and killer, and active just 2 years, 1982 to 1984.
That's a high body count, Brandy, for
Yes,
2
it is.
years. I mean, that's a lot of
Sure
folks,
is.
and especially if you start adding some of these other ones in, it might be even higher. Well, you know, when we look at his early life, we see a lot of those indicators. You know, we get out the checklist, a true crime profiler's notebook, and start looking at behavioral characteristics as a youth. And what we see is he was the youngest of 4 children, but he had an alcoholic father, and he had a father that we know abused his wife and his children. His parents were divorced when he was only 3 years old, and that led to a lot of instability, a lot of moving in with friends and foster parents and babysitters. There was some financial hardship. The mom worked 2 jobs at different times. And strange, she lived with, as far as we know, her older children almost the entire time, but would farm out her other children, including Larry, to other people. She said this made their family stronger. I don't see how that's possible. And I think that's an indicator of what we're going to see, this lack of family, lack of a loving support system, and instability of moving can't be good for the kid.
No, and I think maybe she makes her life easier. I have seen this in several cases, John, where you do have a parent that either gives up the kids, the younger children, doesn't have the ability to take care of them, but she's working 2 jobs. She's living with the oldest children, and frankly, that separation is not good. So whatever her reason was, it's not going to be good for the children.
Well, and we learn out a little bit later when we take a little bit deeper dive into her life, we discover that she was married and divorced 4 times. And I think she just kept picking some losers here. I don't know another way to say it. We know at least 2 of the stepfathers drank heavily and were abusive, and have one report of one of the stepdads holding Larry's head beneath scalding water to discipline him. So if we're talking about 4 husbands in a fairly short period of time, we're talking about 3 that were very, very heavy drinkers, 3 that were abusive. You can see how this is playing into this young man's life. We also know, because he was impoverished, and we've seen this before, he was rejected socially by his peers. He was bullied by his peers. He had severe acne and very low self-esteem. And we know that the mom, on at least 2 different occasions, sent him off to a home for what she called unruly boys. So all of this to me, Brandy, is looking like a disaster in the making. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, and not only that, you mentioned everything kind of growing up and married 4 times, abusive fathers. I mean, that right there, enough, right? But now she's sending them off and unruly boys. And I don't know. It's kind of a sad upbringing, right? I mean, there is some empathy, I think, to think while they're children that they have to go through this. But then he starts dealing with his own sexuality, John, and realizes that he is a homosexual during adolescence. And
Yeah.
so now open about his sexuality, but having feelings of maybe self hate, not really understanding yourself. So now we're kind of throwing this into the mix.
Right. And this certainly played a part, when he was a young man, 14, 15 is what we're told here. He not only said, yes, I'm a homosexual, but he said, I hate myself. And I hate myself for it. And we can see this progress. We know from statements from folks that knew him at that stage and young that when he would have sex with other men, he would call them all kinds of names as if he was fantasizing that he was having sex with women. And in a fairly short period of time, he started frequenting the gay bars and having casual relations with a number of men. He became a bodybuilder, and he had a sadistic streak and a very violent temper. And I thought this was really interesting. There was comment after comment after comment that said, oh, we all knew Larry, and we know that he was well known in the gay community, especially among those who had a leather fetish. So he's into leather, he's into bondage, he's into violence. We know he has a violent streak. So this didn't just appear out of midair one day. This is something that started from a very young age of him turning into adolescence and then just continually progressed.
I would almost wonder if steroids played a part in any of this, the sadistic streak and the violent temper and being a bodybuilder, plus already what he's going to, the mental state he's already in. If this just sort of, because, there's can be escalation when they're on the steroids, right? To that temper and be able to kind of act these things out, including the fetish, right? It's kind of like a different kind of drug for them. So I would wonder if maybe that played into this a little bit as well.
I thought about that too, and then I started looking a little harder into the bodybuilder aspect of it, and that he was a painter. That was his primary job. So he worked in the construction trade. So to me, it was almost like he was trying to deny who he was. He said there was self-hatred for being gay, and he was trying to build himself up as a bodybuilder and get into a field, construction, that was kind of a manly type of field. We know he never graduated high school. He did get a GED, and he did for a very short period of time attend Indiana State University. And while living there, he made a relationship with somebody, Robert Little. He's a 38-year-old, so quite a bit older, library science professor. And he's described as unattractive and socially awkward. And Larry would apparently bring men home to him so that they could share partners sexually. So kind of a different relationship. He actually moved in with him and lived with him for quite a period of time.
Okay. So I've seen this in a few cases, right? Is this an example of a father figure, maybe that he never had, and then he's able to share that sort of, sexuality with him and have maybe this is what connects them, right? And then he moves in with them. So I am curious to find out more about this relationship.
Yeah, I
Um,
think you're right on. I think it is a father figure type
mhm,
relationship, knowing the age difference, certainly totally different backgrounds. They're not
mhm,
sharing a whole lot in common here. So maybe he found someone he could look up to and admire
yeah,
and hang out with, right? I don't
right.
know. I think you're right on there.
All right. So, from a profiling perspective, what are we picking up so far? We know the early indicators are there. We have any crimes up to this point? Is he just now bringing men home? Kind of, again, you hate yourself, right? You hate yourself that he's a homosexual. And that's interesting, John, because we encourage people to love themselves, no matter whether they are gay, not gay, whatever that might be. But he can't seem to break that. So, how is this playing into that profiling perspective?
Well, some of the boxes obviously that we checked were abusive parents, parents that overused alcohol, and not just his natural father, but his stepfathers for an extended period of time were both alcoholics and abusive. So we're checking those boxes right away. We don't know about mental health issues. We do know that he wasn't the most handsome guy, he had a lot of acne, that he got bullied a lot. His intelligence was average at best, is what some of the quotes that I read said about it. He was a loner because he was bullied. And so he had not really, not great social skills. And I think some of that was maybe him getting into bodybuilding and doing other things, trying to make himself more attractive to other people. And certainly we see a fascination from a fairly early age with pornography and bondage, but he really hasn't started into this criminal cycle yet. But quite frankly, Brandy, in the very beginning of the show here, we've checked enough boxes. We can see that development and that formation of somebody that's going to have issues for the rest of his life.
Well, it does start August 3rd, 1978. At least this is what we know as the first attempted murder. He
Yep.
picks up a hitchhiker, John Craig Long, puts a knife to his chest, forces him to undress, handcuffs him, and then bounds his ankles. So now we've got restraints. He's
That he brought with him, right?
that he
So,
brought with him. I was just about to say
y-
that. He's got handcuffs. He's prepared for this.
yeah. So right now, in the very beginning, very first crime, we see this very organized. This was not a random act. He actively picked somebody up, which
Mhm.
sometimes can be a crime of opportunity, but we already know he's got handcuffs with him and restraints to bind him. So we're going down that very organized path very quickly.
Yeah, he actually so Long tries to get away and he stabs him in the chest, which punctures his lung, and he pretends to be dead, John, so he'll leave him alone and it works. He flees and Long walks to a house and calls paramedics. So he thought he killed him.
Yeah. Yeah. He thought he killed him, but he also, I think, went back to look and he wasn't there
Mhm.
anymore,
Yep.
and discovered he had actually crawled and made it to a nearby house where paramedics and the sheriff showed up. We don't know why. He didn't explain it. He went
Mhm.
back, he went to the house where his victim was and gave the sheriff's deputy the handcuff key to release him. And he said it was all an accident. It was just rough sex. It got out of hand. It was an accident. The deputy didn't believe him and arrested him. And they searched his vehicle and discovered a hunting knife, a whip, a butcher knife, more handcuffs, tear gas, and a sword. Talk
Oh my
about
God.
being prepared, Brandy.
Well, and we talk about the missed opportunities, John, and this is one of them. He's later charged with aggravated battery and he pleads guilty. He has a bond of $10,000. His friends actually raised this money,
Yep.
and then he's released on bail on August 23rd. His lawyers offered Long a check, basically a sorry, for $2,500 in return for his agreeing not to press charges.
From
John,
Little, by the way. The
yes.
money came from Robert Little, and we're going to see him utilize a couple people here over his entire criminal career, and they stay with him. They know
Mm.
what he's doing, and there's always more to the story. So he
Wow.
offered the victim 2,500 not to press charges. Long agreed to it. Eyler changed his plea to not guilty and was acquitted and fined $43 in court cost.
John, are they just good? I mean, my goodness, we talk about them being able to talk people into being accomplices, but now you have actually paid a victim to not press charges. I mean, he knew he was trying to kill him, John.
Yeah, which
Right?
is illegal in most states. So there's always a way around it, with
Yeah.
one set of attorneys approaching another, and we'll pay for
Wild.
hospital expense. There's always ways around it. But it might be that his victim didn't want to go through a trial, didn't want to talk about maybe his sexual orientation. There's always so much more to it. But as you said, this was a huge missed opportunity. I mean, aggravated assault is a pretty big felony. Probably would have got some prison time for it, and instead got off with a $43 fine. Now, on each episode of True Crime and Wine, it wouldn't be True Crime and Wine without the wine, right? We always have the wine here with us. I've got mine right here. But I want to call your attention today to a very special wine in our investigation series. The investigation series. Remember, that's the 6 wines. Let me reach back here and grab it. I've got it right here. I keep these close to me. But the investigation series is our 6 wine series. You can find information for buying it in the link on the podcast here, and you can find it in the link on all of our socials. But today I want to feature this one. This is incredible. It's our sparkling wine, and it's our true crime queen. Yes, I've been introducing you to each one of these 6 wines, and this kind of finishes up the series here. Our true crime queen. We had a blast naming it, designing the label, and it's a semi-secco sparkling wine. It features aromas of green apple, pear, and flowers. You're also going to pick up some hints of orange and, of course, lemon zest. And the flavors are lightly fruity and very pleasant. It's got a good, strong acidity. It's off-dry, medium-bodied. And let me tell you, it is just great on the palate. Make sure you serve it ice cold and calculating. Ice cold, this semi-secco sparkling wine. You're absolutely going to love it. And if I didn't mention it yet, $1 from every bottle is donated to the DNA Dope Project, a 501c3 nonprofit that helps law enforcement agencies name unidentified remains using investigative genetic genealogy. Yes, just like we've talked about so many times right here on the show, True Crime and Wine. So check out our True Crime Queen semi-secco sparkling wine, part of the investigation series. You're going to love it.
Okay, John, so we are going to start talking about this very strange relationship that he forms in August of 1981. This is with a 20-year-old male, John Dobrovolsky, who lived with his wife, Sally, and 2 children and 3 foster children. Okay, does
Yes.
everybody get that? All right,
Yeah.
all right. So
It is a gay relationship.
Yep.
With a guy, his wife, 2 children, and 3 foster children. And Sally tolerated this, it said,
Okay.
because Eyler agreed to pay a third of the rent.
Okay. Once again, money is talking in this guy's life. All right. Both into sadomasochism, John, and frequently chained and beat each other.
Yep.
All right. So this is a very deviant sexual behavior between the both of them. During this time, Eiler worked both in Illinois and Indiana and still lived part-time with Robert Little. Don't forget about him.
Right.
He
Yeah.
was the
So
one. Yes.
he's now living in two places with
Yep.
two different men, two different relationships. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So he, Dobrovolsky continued to pay his bills even after he was accused of being a serial killer. So, John, he had a grip on this guy.
And on Little, remember Little
Yes.
bailed him out with a $2,500, whatever you want to call it, bribe
Yep.
to drop the charges. And now we've got this long-term lover of his who is not only allowing him to live there, but he is going to continue to financially support this guy for years. This is
Mhm.
absolutely crazy.
Okay, well then killing spree begins. Okay, so this has been going on. He's got these relationships, has these men in his life. On October 12th, 1982, Eiler lured a 21-year-old named Craig Townsend into his vehicle in Crown Point, Indiana. Now, although drugged, he was beaten, later abandoned naked, and was found comatose in a rural field, causing Townsend to also suffer exposure. The young man survived this assault, John.
Yep. Yeah. So we see another attack where someone survived, and you see Eiler evolving here, right? He's learning really quickly. I can't keep letting these guys survive.
Hmm.
I'm going to be caught. I'm going to go to jail. And he doesn't wait very long for his next victim. He knows he messed up. It's just 11 days later, on October 23rd, he abducts and murders a 19-year-old named Stephen Crockett. And you got to remember, these people are being found very close to the interstate. And where's he living, Brandy? In
Indiana and Illinois.
Yep, in two different households. Two
Yep.
different households. Yep. Um, so the body of Crockett was discovered in a cornfield in Kankakee County approximately 12 hours after the murder, and the autopsy revealed he had been beaten and stabbed to death, suffering 32 knife wounds, including 4 to the head. And what we're going to see here is, as part of this evolution into being a serial killer, every one of his victims is going to experience what I would call severe overkill.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking when you mentioned all of those stab wounds, that's usually the overkill. John, what are you picking up as his MO?
Well, we know a couple things just with the first couple victims here. He brings the restraints with him. He brings handcuffs for the hands, restraints for the arms, for the feet, legs. So he's bringing his restraints with him. Several victims suffer varying degrees being stabbed or slashed to death. A majority of the wounds are inflicted on the victim's chest or abdomen. We're actually going to learn about this a little bit later on. I don't want to let it out yet, but we're going to see this as a reoccurring pattern. He typically gave them drugs or alcohol to, sedate them prior to restraining them and murdering them. He did disembowel some, maybe up to 4 of his victims. We're going to learn that he also did that. And he typically discarded them in fields close to major highways. So again, we're living in 2 houses, working in 2 different states, constantly traveling the interstate plays a huge role. And one of the things he does is he has a very typical pattern. When we talk about serial killers, you know how some of them they like a certain body type, or they like a certain hair color, or eye color, or the restraints have to be with a certain specific knot. Everybody has their own kind of unique signature or MO, at least, in how they commit these crimes. And his MO was pulling their trousers or underwear down around their knees or ankles, and then taking their shirts and their wallets. Now, any guess why he would take shirts and wallets? And I know it's going to be a total guess because I'm going to tell you, and I had no idea. This is freaky. So
The only thing I can think of is like remembering their face or who they are, and then he would do something. He would use the shirt for something else, and I don't know,
Like,
John. My mind can go super.
yeah,
We research a lot of this weird stuff. So I think of his sexual lifestyle.
yep.
I think of like how aggressive he is, and there's probably a lot of like self-satisfaction that he does with some of these things he's taking from his victims. So I'm gonna say it's used for sexual purpose after the fact.
Very good, Brandy. You're exactly right. The wallet is just a typical souvenir, like we see with every serial
Mhm.
killer. The shirt he would bring to his lovers who
Mm.
would satisfy themselves with the bloody shirt of the victims.
John, I don't
Just
know if we've covered a case like
I was
this.
going to say, Brady, just when you think you've seen it all, we've been together a long time. We've done a lot of cases. Just when you think we've covered just about
No,
everything,
no.
now we've got this.
No, this is getting a little bit yeah, no, this is and again, you're having someone else do this act, right? Not you.
Yep.
You've actually convinced someone else to do this, which is so wild.
But doesn't that tie in to why maybe you're
Hmm.
receiving rent or money or right?
Hmm.
You're
Right.
getting some compensation out of bringing these bloody souvenirs back so that
Hmm.
they can self-please
Oh,
themselves. And yeah, just when we think of
uh
a stranger, I had to put that in there for you, though, Brandy.
Thank you.
I wanted to see your face when we talked about it. Actually,
Well, you saw it. That was a
yes, yes,
pretty good darn guess.
yes.
All right.
You won't be
October.
receiving any T-shirts in the mail
Yeah,
anyway. I'm
please no,
kidding.
no, don't send me t-shirts, anyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. John, so October to November, now we're in 1982. Just 1 week later, on October 30th, a 26-year-old named Edgar Underkulfer disappeared from Rantoul, Illinois. His body was not discovered, though, until March of 1983. In a field close to Danville, Illinois. So, sometime the following month, Eyler murdered a 25-year-old barman named John Johnson. His body was discovered 1 month later in Lowell, Indiana. John, another one, November 20th, Eyler abducts a 19-year-old hitchhiker named William Lewis at a location close to Vincennes, Indiana. He was stabbed to death and buried in a field close to Rensselaer, Indiana. So, John, we've got some back-to-back-to-back murders.
Well, we've got them not only back to back, but look at all the jurisdictions you named. That's
Yep.
the thing that jumped out at me. Every city you named was different. We talked about multiple states. So he knows enough that he's committing these crimes, that he's leaving the bodies in multiple law enforcement jurisdictions, scattered over multiple states. And is anybody tying these together?
No,
No,
no.
absolutely not. I mean, they're not tying, one body is found in a field in one county, another body is found in a county, an entire state. Those crimes aren't tied together. He
Right.
knows it, and that's why we're seeing such a high body count in such a short period of time.
Well, and also, we're going to talk about victimology. You mentioned him not necessarily having a type, or a lot of serial killers have a type.
Right.
Are we seeing a type in this person? We know that's young men. We know that they're like age 15 to 26, but is there anything else sticking out for you from a victimology perspective?
Yeah, not like what we usually see. What we usually see in victimology is similar hair, height, weight, eye color, occupation, that type thing. So we're not seeing that. What we're seeing, though, is he is targeting members of the gay community, specifically gay runaways, gay hitchhikers, men traveling alone. So we're seeing that he's finding this vulnerable community and he's targeting it. And we also see that there's no personal relationships here, that these are mostly strangers. They're
Mhm.
brief encounters in isolated locations. And so we're seeing that he knows, wow, this is a subgroup of the gay population that I can victimize and there's no family, there's no
Hmm.
friends, there's no one's going to report him missing, there's no one's going to be looking for him. And some of these bodies, as you said, didn't turn up for months or years later. Nobody even knew they were gone.
So, from all of the profiling we've done, organized or not organized, very organized, a little disorganized in some things. What are you picking up so far?
I think he's organized. Some people go, oh, well, it's spontaneous. He's picking up hitchhikers. It's not spontaneous if you're trolling for them. If
Mm,
he's trolling for young males, runaways, gays, hitchhikers, if he knows his victim group and he's simply driving the highway constantly looking for that victim group, he may stop 10 people. But if he
yeah.
talks to him for 10 seconds and realizes that's not my victim group, he just drives off. So I think this is very, very organized. And, why these victims? Because they're mobile, they're out hitchhiking, they're walking the highways. There's going to be a lower percentage of reporting. Like we said, not family members, not friends, not relatives that are going to report them missing. That means no immediate investigation. So no, I mean, his age range, he liked younger men, 15 to 26. So a fairly tight age range. He liked guys that were smaller, maybe because he was a bodybuilder. He was bigger. He could overpower them. But he really picked up on the vulnerabilities. So I see this as very, very organized from a victimology standpoint. He knew who he wanted, and he would keep trolling until he got him.
Okay, John. So December 1982, this is kind of a different, maybe, I don't know. I was reading about Stephen Egan, 23 years old. This happened on December the 19th, abducted from Terre Haute. His body was discovered in Woodland, close to Indiana State Road 63 on December 28th. So just a few days later. Now, an examination, John, of the outbuilding, which was on an abandoned farm close to the crime scene, revealed several traces of human flesh upon the walls in areas where plaster had been damaged. So this basically told investigators to speculate that Egan had probably been suspended against the wall of this property as he was being murdered, afflicted injuries. I'm sure there was a lot of, torture possibly going on, and possibly even extensive mutilation. His abdomen, chest, and throat, John, the coroner said likely there was more than one perpetrator in this murder. Well, we know he's got other
Aha.
accomplices that he's, bringing shirts to. So, gosh, this is, pinned up to the wall, John.
Yeah, and this is the first time that we're seeing any sign of an accomplice. This is going to come back up several months from now, but this is where we're seeing the first sign of an accomplice, that it might take more than one person, even a strong person, to hoist somebody up, to suspend them from the wall, to torture them, and to torture them in such a way with as many stab wounds and victimize them like they did, that the coroner goes, I don't think this is just one person. So this gets
Hmm.
very interesting now. It's a whole different ball game if you're sending a shirt back home or taking a shirt back home to actually having another offender with you at the scene of a crime, and especially a brutal one like this.
Okay, Don, I want to continue with this profiling piece of, I want to talk about the MO of the torture, right? So now investigators do believe there may be an accomplice, more than one other person involved in what happened to Egan. So what do you want to mention there, and what do we know so far?
Well, I think the important thing is the word torture. Because with every serial killer, we know there's something that gives them that high, that satisfaction, that climax. With some, it's the murder. With some, it's cannibalism. With this one, it is definitely torture. He is torturing his victims. He binds them with ligatures. He uses handcuffs to restrain them. There's significant amounts of torture with each of the victims, sexual humiliation, prolonged suffering. Many of his victims, he stabbed 20 to 40 times. You talk
Mm,
about overkill. And so this is a combination of very sadistic sexual behavior, very fantasy driven homicide. And then he moves the bodies after he kills them, to dispose of them. And that's another sign of premeditation, of organized behavior. So he
yeah.
even, and he doesn't try to bury them per se. He'll throw them in a field. He'll cover them with some brush. And that's why some of them are found a little while later, and others, maybe a very isolated area, may not be found for months and months. But
Mm.
this particular serial killer is getting off on the torture. No doubt about it.
Um, you mentioned the investigators not really putting all these cases together yet, right? All these murders across different jurisdictions.
Right.
But John, the coroner does. Thankfully, someone's paying a little bit of attention to this. So the coroner starts to connect these cases. So before we jump into the next murder, I do want to mention he finishes Agan's autopsy. He then conducts an autopsy on the body of a 21-year-old man named John Roach, whose body had been found in a field close to Interstate 70. Now, he noted striking similarities in the injuries, John, to both Roach and Agan. Stab wounds to the abdomen, chest, throat, suggesting rage in both of these stabbings. So the coroner's kind of like picking up these, that these actually might be connected.
Yeah, and let me, for the listeners, this is not out of the ordinary, because you may have bodies turn up in multiple law enforcement jurisdictions. So say that we have a typical county, and in that county, you have unincorporated areas where the sheriff is in charge. You have incorporated areas where the police departments are in charge and have jurisdiction. So you may have 2 or 3 jurisdictions that have bodies, and they're not connecting them because they're not talking, and they
Right.
don't know that there's any reason to talk to anybody else. But you have a county coroner now that the bodies are being funneled into him. So he actually does have the ability to connect the murders where the police never knew that there was the same MO. It's the coroner, and we've seen this in several cases where the ME is the one that raises the red flag to the police and goes, hey, I had 2 or 3 bodies, and the MO of the murder was very, very similar. So yes, in this case, thankfully a coroner started to raise the red flags.
Great. So we've got, unfortunately, another victim. December 30th, a 22-year-old Yale University graduate named David Block disappeared from an Illinois suburb of Highland Park. His body was discovered, John, by a farmer in a field south of Illinois, Route 173, on May 7th, 1984.
Yeah, months later, right?
Months later.
Yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, I think even longer than that, because if I remember right, these crimes, we're still in 1982. 82.
Well,
Yeah, we're still
Lara,
we're still in 82. So that's an
yeah.
example of a body not being found for a year and a half.
But we're now in 1983, John. 1982. He is on a murder streak, but we're now in January 24th. Starting off the year 1983, he abducts and murders a 16-year-old John Irvin Gibson in Lake County, Illinois. His body was not discovered until April 15th. Between March and April of that year, 1983, Eyler is believed to have killed a minimum of 5 further victims between the ages of 17 and 29. And
Yeah.
we know they don't stop, John. We know they don't stop.
No. And we don't know about the bodies yet, but later on, we're going to be able to find out who the bodies were. And through some DNA and genetic genealogy, actually able to identify some of those victims. So, but yeah, the 1982 killing spree kept going strong in 1983.
So we're actually on May 9th. So May 9, 1983, 21-year-old Daniel Scott McNeve was discovered in a field close to Indiana State Road 39 in Hendricks County. He suffered 11 knife wounds to the neck, 5 to his back, and 11 to his abdomen. So again, overkill. Stabbings of the neck, the back, and abdomen. 9 days later, John, just 9 days later, he murders a 25-year-old named Richard Bruce in Effingham, Illinois. His body was thrown from a bridge into a creek and remained undiscovered until December 5th of that year.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So the killing spree is really continuing. 82 was a bunch of bodies. 83 is continuing that. We know you keep saying Indiana, Illinois. We also know about Wisconsin. We know that he traveled major interstates, I-65, I-70, I-80, I-90, and he really trolled that Indiana, Illinois corridor between where he lived and where he worked that he drove on a very, very regular basis. Now that the bodies are starting to pile up, we can also kind of geographically profile some of the dump sites. So we know where he's picking up some of these people, but we're starting to see clusters emerge outside of Indianapolis, Chicago, and Kankakee, and we're able to identify that he's using truck routes, obviously the interstate. He's using rural roads off the interstate as his dump locations. And because he's on these roads all the time, he knows how to blend right into the
Hmm.
normal traffic and travel patterns of everybody else. And that's why it's
Yeah.
so difficult for law enforcement to get a handle on this.
Yeah. Well, and there are so many interstates.
Yeah.
I mean, and then that's wide and expansive and lots of places. And so I can see how it'd be very easy to not think one person could be responsible for these interstate crimes happening across state. I mean, and it's slower to put together, but thankfully the coroner's taking a look at this and hopefully they'll start to kind of pair some of this. So, John, there's a reward. An activist offers a reward, and this is within Indiana's gay community. So what do we know about this reward?
Well, that the gay community realized several of its members were disappearing. And they suspected it might be the work of a single perpetrator. The newspaper, The Works, in an effort to assist the police, created an anonymous hotline and published an article speculating both the identity and motive of the perpetrator, and they suspected him of struggling to accept his sexuality. They got together several members of the community, one of the members of the victims' families, and the editors offered a $1,500 reward for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of this killer. So we're starting to see the community rise up. We've seen this in other cases. The pig farmer case, he was targeting indigenous Canadian people, native people, and we saw that community rise up, and to the point where the police department, law enforcement, could not ignore it.
Right.
They had to respond to this situation, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, in fact, early spring of 1983, they decide to get together. So police in Indiana, they start to tentatively link, John, several of these murders of the young males committed, in the state. 6 days after the discovery of McNave's body, the Indiana State Police conducted a meeting. They had 35 detectives from each of the 4 jurisdictions where these bodies of males have been turning up, suggesting that the wounds are from the same perpetrator.
Yep.
So they start talking about this, and the conclusion at this meeting was that the same person is murdering in 4 jurisdictions.
Right. So now they know we're looking for a serial killer. All
Yep.
of us aren't individually working anymore. We have one killer that is killing people in all of our 4 jurisdictions, and that's going to increase exponentially as more people start connecting the dots here on bodies that have been found in their jurisdiction. So much that they formed a task force and said, we've got to work together. We can't work individually. We've got to share information. We've got to share the forensics reports, the crime scene reports, everything. And so they decided that 2 detectives from the state police, 2 from Indianapolis police, and 2 from every county that was involved would be on this task force. Now, this is only Indiana at this point, right? So we're not
Right.
off into Illinois or Wisconsin yet. So it's called the Central Indiana Multi-Agency Investigation Team. They had a lieutenant that was in charge from the Indianapolis police, and they said, hey, we're going to start entering all of this information into a database and linking it to other agencies to see if there's more victims, more bodies, or maybe a suspect.
Yeah, so they actually contact the FBI to basically find out if there's any other similar homicides that have been reported, right? So they know how these men are being killed.
So what are
So
they
they
putting
want.
in there? Tell our listeners what they're putting in there.
I
What do you think?
what do you mean putting in there? You mean
What
like
do
what
they?
the information?
Yeah. What information? I'll just tell you. Yeah. So there's a form. It's a form you fill out, Brandy, and
Oh,
you put all the specifics of the crime and the crime scene in
mhm.
the form. And you're going to put things like stabbed in the abdomen 20 times, 30 times, 40 times, also stabbed in the neck and throat, also stabbed in
Oh,
the chest, used restraints. What did I tell you earlier? Trousers or shorts
mhm.
found around the knees or ankles, t-shirts missing, wallets missing. So you're putting
I see.
all of those things into the FBI's National Crime Information Center database, and that
Mhm.
database is sent to everybody. Everybody has access to it, and it will start analyzing, right? It's a big Excel sheet,
Yep.
right? And it's going
Right.
to start analyzing where have we had other murders that have
Mhm.
similar characteristics to everything that you put in there.
Okay, so John, they get a few hits on this.
Yep.
One comes up in Kentucky, and that is a response to the murder of Jay Reynolds. There's another one that pops up in Chicago, and that's a response to the murder of Jimmy Roberts, who had been stabbed 35 times. Um, June 6th of 1983, one of Eiler's former lovers called the hotline and did
Yeah,
identify Eiler as the suspect.
that was the one set up by the community, right? So that
Yes.
was not a law enforcement. That was the one
Yes.
set up by the committee for the award. So one of his former lovers turned him in.
And that informant also said he knew Eiler, I'm sorry, and the informant also said he knew Eiler drugged a 14-year-old and traveled between Indiana and Illinois regularly. So they're starting to get some information about this guy.
Oh, he's right on it. Now they've got a name. Now they've got a suspect. He said that he admitted to him about stabbing a hitchhiker. He said that he was into bondage. He knew that he traveled that route. So the information starting to pile up here.
And what happens when you have a name? Well, you can start to look into him. And that's exactly what these investigators do. They know he was, John had been arrested in that 1978 attempt of sexual assault of a teenage hitchhiker whom he had stabbed and left for dead. We mentioned that at
Yep.
the beginning of
Yep.
the show. The handcuffing of the used wrists and the binding of his ankles, which actually matched modus operandi of the highway murderer, whose victims had also been discovered with welt marks upon their wrists and ankles.
Yeah. And so that's really common, Brandy. And in that database, you can be very, very specific. You can put what type of restraints were used, how they were used, what type of knots were tied. You can upload photos. So all of a sudden, we're seeing the MO of a serial killer being revealed here, right?
Right. And they don't think there's enough, though, to actually place him on a full surveillance, but they have enough information. They start to informally track him. I mean, they're going to keep an eye on him.
Right. Yeah, they probably don't have enough at this point, but they're moving very quickly in the right direction. And one of the things that they did once they got those hits back from the FBI information that they input was they followed up to the next step and asked the FBI to profile this guy. So I thought this was really, really interesting. And it's amazing to me how good the profilers are.
I
I mean,
know.
it is amazing how they hit so many things right. They said a white male in his late 20s, early 30s, worked a menial profession. He was house painter, presented a rough exterior, right? He was a bodybuilder and pretended to be real macho. They said it'd be someone that hated his sexual orientation and wanted other males to accept him. That's exactly what
Yeah.
we've been describing here. They said he would project a macho image and try to get the approval of other males that were not homosexual.
Mhm.
That he might frequent, bars where, construction workers or cowboys or other types of masculine figures that we see would hang out at. And that he may express a hatred of homosexuals, which he certainly did. That he would try to erase his act by just getting rid of the victim. A little soil, a little leaves, a couple of branches, something just to cover them up. They're gone. They're
Mhm.
no longer in his thoughts. He got rid of them. They said he likely had a middle-aged, middle class, but markedly more intelligent accomplice in some of the homicides. And
Wow.
and even though some of the victims had been, athletic in nature, they said this offender had to be very strong. It's unbelievable. You got to remember, these guys are simply looking at the information that was input
Yeah.
and the crime scene photos. They have no clue
Who
about
this
Larry
is, what
Eyler,
this,
right?
yeah. Yeah. It's
Right?
amazing. It's
Look
amazing.
look how they hit it on the head.
Yeah. Amazing. John, unfortunately, since they can't keep him under full surveillance, he's on the radar. The murders still continue.
Yep.
July 2nd, 1983, unidentified Hispanic male is found dead with multiple stab wounds in his abdomen. Just after that, August 31st, 1983, 28-year-old Ralph Calise found with 28 stab wounds. And ME did link victim to the earlier homicide. So again, paying attention to this. In September, a reporter linked two more murders with the same MO. And then in September again of 1983, investigators met and linked 17 victims to the killer. So, John, he's still active, right?
Wow.
Murdering, but he's also being investigated. And now they've linked 17 victims. I mean, where did they go from here?
Yeah, tremendous amount of victims. And at this point, they're going to start putting the pressure on. We think we know who the killer is. We think we know what his pattern is. We think we know what he's doing. And we've just got to be able to get a hold of him.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to catch him in the act. We've got to get some evidence. And fortunately, on September 20th of 83, he was arrested, like we've seen so many times before, for a routine traffic violation in Lowell, Indiana. And he had with him a young male, and the officer, when he stopped him on traffic, figured out that the young male was in the car and probably had been solicited for sex.
Mm.
But unfortunately, prior to the arrest and without his consent, the vehicle was searched. That's going to
Oh,
come back up
no.
later. So
Okay.
they now got him in custody. They call the task force and they come in and they want to formally interview him. Okay.
Okay.
Because of the murders. He refuses to discuss his sexuality, says he has no knowledge of the murders, and agrees to a forensic examination of his vehicle. And he provides fingerprints and photographs. So
Hmm.
he's cooperating at this point to a limited extent. But
Yeah.
more bodies are still being found.
Yeah. We have two in October, the 4th and the 18th of 83. Hunters discovered the body of an 18-year-old Eric Hansen, whose arms, head, and legs were removed from his torso. October 8th, 1983, bodies of 4 additional victims found close to an abandoned farmhouse in Indiana. All victims have been stabbed multiple times and have been dead for months. We've got December 7th of 83. A hunter discovers the skeleton of 17-year-old Richard Wayne, no Route 40, and a second body, which remains unidentified. Coincidentally, John, Eyler was issued a traffic citation in the same area in September.
Yeah, so the bodies keep piling up here.
Yeah, they
And
do.
and what did they find when they searched his vehicle? Well, they found two sections of nylon rope, no big deal,
Mm.
handcuffs, a hammer, two baseball bats, a mallet, and surgical tape. So, you're kind of on the fence, right? You're kind of on the fence. Could some of it be used? Could some of it be coincidence? Certainly not a smoking gun.
Right.
They do discover, though, that his boots, at least from an initial examination, match the plaster casts that were taken at the Khalees murder scene. And the tires, being two different brands of tires on the front of the vehicle, also matched. They
Mm.
found blood under the handle of one of the knives and know that Eyler frequently traveled the route where numerous victims were found. They felt they had enough at that point, went to a judge, got a search warrant for Robert Little's house, and they found credit card receipts linking Eyler to the areas where victims were found. So now the evidence is mounting, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But John, okay, he's charged with murder October 29th. December of 1983, a judge rules that traffic violation arrest was legal, but not the search, and all subsequent searches are invalid. After two more hearings, he's freed. On
Yes,
February 6th, 1984, they are letting this guy out again.
because of a technicality.
I
Right? He
know.
was not read his rights prior to being arrested or after being arrested and prior to being questioned and prior to granting consent to search the vehicle. And so the judge said it took multiple hearings over a series of months, but the judge said, I'm sorry, but you can't use this. And not only can you not use this, you can't use anything else you found that was based on this. So basically, everything was out the door. And the defense said, listen, you can't use the evidence. You got it illegally. And the blood stains you found at the crime scene you're talking about are A positive. My client's O positive. There's no way you can keep this man in custody, Judge. The judge agreed and released him.
Well, that's a shame because on August 19th, 1984 at 10:30 p.m., Eyler lures a 16-year-old uptown youth named Daniel Bridges to his apartment.
Now, let
Bridges,
me
yeah,
mention here, Brandy, the
sure.
apartment, he's now relocated to Chicago because even though he was released, he was told, listen, do not leave the state. So he goes to Chicago. He gets an apartment. Who's paying for his apartment?
Oh, one of his
One of his
lovers?
lovers. Yes. So I just
One of
want
his
to throw that
lovers.
in there. This is the apartment we're talking about.
Wow. Okay. So he lures a boy to the apartment. So they know that the Daniel Bridges, the 16-year-old, he was a habitual runaway, probably had a neglected childhood. Although heterosexual, had been a male prostitute since the age of 12, John.
Yep.
Heartbreaking. Inside Eiler's apartment, the youth was bound to a chair with clothesline before he was beaten, tortured, then stabbed to death. Eyler then dismembered Bridges' body in his bathroom, cut into 8 pieces, each of which was completely drained of blood before being placed inside 6 separate plastic bags. This reminds me of the woman that made the tea cakes out of the blood of her victims, John, draining and using it to cook. So now he's dismembering.
And it reminds me of, wasn't it the Grim Sleeper who actually put the bodies in the trash bags so that
Yep.
the city would simply dispose of them?
Yeah.
Yep.
Ugh.
We've had this happen a couple of times. Yep. I invite everyone to follow True Crime and Wine on our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can find us at JJ, that's me, JJ True Crime and Wine, JJ True Crime and Wine on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Also, if you'd like to sign up for our monthly newsletter, you can shoot us an email at truecrime@casarowines.com. That's CASSARO wines.com. True Crime at CasarowWines.com. We'll add you to our newsletter. And of course, I've been booking Events all over the country. Today, I was on the phone with Georgia and South Carolina, Montana, Washington, Idaho, even just this morning. And so, if you'd like to bring a true crime and wine to a winery or a wine bar near you, simply email us truecrime@casarowines.com, and we'll hook up with that winery that you recommend and see if we can bring a live show right to you. truecrime@casarowines.com.
Well, they find John, they discover his body. What do we know
Yes.
about that?
Well, they discovered the body because of a janitor named Joseph Balla on the morning of August 21st. His remains had been placed inside a garbage dumpster close to Eyler's apartment, but not within a unit intended for use by Eyler's apartment complex. So a janitor starts looking into it because he wants to get Eyler in trouble, not for murder, but for illegal dumping. He threw a trash bag, not in his own dumpster, but one adjacent to where he was supposed to dump. So Balla says this is illegal dumping, and I'm going to get him in trouble for it. When he goes to remove the bag, it splits open, and a severed human leg falls out.
Oh my gosh.
He
John.
calls the police and tells them, I know who did this. I saw the guy. It's Larry Eyler. I talked to the guy, and I saw him place this bag in the dumpster. I wanted to get him in trouble for illegal dumping, but now we got a little bit more, Brandy.
Oh my gosh. Talk about a grace of luck that you have pissed someone off because you put the garbage in the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And now they are going to catch you for murder. John, there is a final arrest. Officers immediately go to Eyler's apartment where they arrest him and detain. Here we go. Dobrowski is back.
Right.
He's there. I
He's
guess
the one
he's
that
there at
paid for the apartment. Yeah.
Yes.
So get this is what just amazes me. You talk about how these guys can control people and everything. His lover knows. We don't know if he was involved in the murders. He knows the guy was a serial killer because he was arrested for it. And yet he still bought and paid for his apartment, and he's with him still.
It's weird. Just this weird fascination. I don't know. Let's not try to think and get in their heads. All right. So they find evidence, including the blood of Daniel Bridges. They find it on the bed, chair, a belt, a sofa. They actually find it beneath the floorboards.
Yep.
The officers also found his clothes and receipts from the purchase of hacksaw blades. Eyler's fingerprints were found inside and outside of the trash bag. So, John, they've got him. Luminol revealed blood where Eyler had dragged the body across the floor to the bathtub to dismember it. So they've got him.
Yeah, finally, they get the break that they need. The janitor that was upset about illegal dumping.
Yeah, I love it.
And stumbled upon a serial killer. He was tried for kidnapping and murder of Danny Bridges. The attorney tried saying other people killed the teen. There's no evidence that Eyler killed him. Eyler didn't even know it was in the bag. The attorney said Eyler did dispose of it, but that's not even a crime because he was simply taking out the trash. But witnesses testified that the knife wounds on the victim matched the knife in Eyler's apartment. Multiple people saw him disposing of several trash bags. We know there were 8 of them in various locations. And the jury simply didn't buy the defense's argument that somebody else did it and Eyler was simply a lackey taking out the trash, you might say. They found him guilty of kidnapping and murder and sentenced him to death.
Yeah. So they talk about, so another murder conviction, though. In November 1990, a DA planned to indict him for the December 1982 murder of Stephen Egan. We know he's the one that they found the material, the bodily fluid and stuff on the plaster on the wall.
Right.
Upon learning of the pending indictment, Eyler agreed to confess, basically in exchange for no death penalty, but insisted the murder was committed by Robert Little. So now he's talking about an accomplice being a
Yep.
part, and investigators already figured there was an accomplice in the murder of Stephen Egan. So in December, Eyler pled guilty to murder in exchange for 60 years. The following week, Little was arrested for murder, John.
Yeah, so now he's serving a death sentence for the Bridges murder, and he's now serving 60 to life on this separate murder. And he's saying, I'll go down for it, but I'm not going to go down alone because in at least 4 of these murders, I had help, and it was Little that helped me. So now Little is arrested. They put him on trial, and Eyler testifies against him that Little had agreed to kidnap and kill Agin, that they did it together. He said they drove to an abandoned shed. They bound him, repeatedly stabbed him. And Little's attorney just turned it around and said, Eyler's trying to get revenge because Little testified against him at the original trial where he received the death sentence. He said, listen, they searched his house. Police went to his house. The only thing they found was receipts that belonged to Larry and nothing else. And so the jury deliberated about 7 hours and acquitted Little. So he was found not guilty. Did he have something to do with it? We don't know, but a jury said he was not guilty.
Wow. Okay, so Eyler dies March 6, 1994. He dies from AIDS-related complications after 10 days of serious, complications and illness to AIDS. The case was under appeal at the time, John?
Yeah, his attorney actually felt a lot of the evidence collected was still collected illegally. And the attorney at the time said she really thought he was going to win that appeal. What would that mean? It would mean that he would maybe get off on the death penalty. But remember, he pled guilty to the 60 years. He was never getting out of jail again. So what Eyler does is he says he knows he's dying. You just said he's sick. He's really sick the last 10 days. He writes out a confession and tells his attorney, don't release this until after I'm dead. The attorney immediately after his death says, I've got a statement for you and I'll give it to you in 2 days. She comes back and says, here's his confession where he admits to murdering 17 people on his own. But he wants you to know that Robert Little helped him kill Daniel Bridges and 3 others. So that's where that 21 number comes in. We still have 21 bodies we're accounting for. Eyler saying, I did 17 on my own, but Little, I want you to know, he helped me with 4 of them, including Bridges. He said that that Little used him to access males for sex and eventually for violence. And Eyler said in the confession that he lured his victims with promises of money, sex, and drugs, that he never had sex with any of them. But get this, Brandy. He stabbed him multiple times in the abdomen. And as he's stabbing him, he's saying, you can now make peace with God. Almost inferring their sexual behavior, their sexuality made them not at peace with God. And he was the one that was going to make it right by torturing and murdering 21 young men. Now, as we put a cork in this edition of the True Crime and Wine podcast, I want to remind our listeners you can follow us on all of our socials at JJ True Crime and Wine, Instagram, Facebook, everything. You can DM us on places that you might say, hey, why don't you bring the show out to our location, or just comment on the show. Certainly, we want you to subscribe on whatever platform you listen to and like us and give us some feedback. Always always helps, all that social media stuff. But I think that about wraps up the business for today. And with that, I want to thank my co-host, Brandy Diamond, for joining me on this journey, and our producer, Lauren Bedsole, back in the Corsicana Command Center, for helping to make the show possible. And I invite you to join us for our next episode, where we're going to feature a unique serial killer who is given the death penalty, but then released only to kill again and receive another death penalty. I'm John Matthews, and thanks for joining us today on True Crime and Wine. Salute.